Okay, Sunday, March 13th. We had a 3-hour air raid siren last night here in Lviv. And actually, there was an event that took place. The, there's a base halfway between Lviv and the Polish border. So we're around 60 kilometers, about 40 miles from the Polish border. And this base is, I think, around 25 kilometers from the Polish border, so around 13 miles, just next to the Polish border. It's called the Yaroriv Polygon Training Site, and it's also known as the International Center for Peacekeeping and Security. And it's a giant military proving ground. It's like a firing range, so it's mostly fields where tanks practice and everything. Well, this was bombed last night. We're not sure if it was cruise missiles or an aircraft. I'm not sure about the casualties yet, but I haven't heard of any. Nothing has come through the feeds or on the news yet about this. It's only in the news that this area was hit in the Lviv region. But to me, this was a symbolic raid. Russia last night was saying that they would attack NATO supply convoys or NATO supply planes, bringing weapons into Ukraine. And I believe they just attacked this place because it's very close to the border, showing that they don't really give a crap. And we need to get some language from America that we'll defend our convoys and defend our supplies coming into Ukraine. Russia just gets to say and do what they want, and we're too scared to say anything back. This is pathetic. So, yeah, it's a bit of a concern that they would do something like this, but it seems like a long stretch for them as well. They're probably getting desperate. The things in Kiev are not going their way, from what I understand. There's been a lot of screw-ups on their side, and the Ukrainians are really fighting viciously. Fighting the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians are fighting the Russians very, very ferociously now, from what I understand, the Battle of Kiev. And so I think the Russians are still slightly advancing, but that's very fluid, and they can't hold anything. Every time they advance, they probably have to give up what's behind them to go forward, because nobody wants them there. Now, the other thing I wanted to comment on is I spent last night reading Western libertarian media or Western media that's trying to offer another point of view that why we shouldn't be in this war, or why this war is some big conspiracy theory. And all my advice to them is they need to come out here and visit. So I watched one episode of Ron Paul's Liberty Report last night, and he was talking about how the Ukrainian election in 2014 was a coup, that the U.S. helped overthrow a legitimate government in 2014, Yanukovych. I can tell you, I was in Kiev in 2014 when all that went down. I didn't leave either. I stayed with my colleagues, and I went to the Maidan Square. It was like a huge camp. I was there. I was there in person. I can tell you, nobody wanted Yanukovych. Nobody wanted to be in the Ukraine that was aligned with Russia. People were tired of it. People wanted to be living like Western people and have laws and rules and get rid of the corruption and all the stealing in the government. They were sick of it. They had enough. And many Ukrainians were going to Europe and seeing what Ukraine could become if they were aligned towards the West versus what they see in Russia. Outside Moscow, it's just poverty and desolation. It's like North Korea. People are really living bad once you're outside of the Moscow and St. Petersburg and some of the other main cities, but it goes downhill very fast. And I know, living in Norway, there's a lot of Russian immigrants there, and everyone tells how much it sucks in Russia and how glad they are to be out and how happy they are when they get their Norwegian passports. You don't see anyone running into Russia trying to get a Russian passport. Okay, so that should be enough. But Ron Paul is really full of shit sometimes. Just have to get that out there. And he really should come here and see it for himself. If he's really believing in liberty, that means a country can choose its own government and choose what weapons it buys, choose who its allies are, and make its own decisions without having to get permission from a superpower. I thought that was his philosophy. So he's he's just, interested in selling his newsletters, and I don't know why he doesn't retire. He's so old and rich, but he's just, constantly dribbling all the time. And, Donald Trump was right to make fun of him, and just call him a whiny old man. We don't need him as president or anywhere near U.S. politics. Definitely not. Another cartoon I saw, it was from a Dutch think tank, and they put on their website that they can't reveal their location because they're telling the truth and everything. And they had a cartoon. It was like a picture in a picture. So they had the picture in the background was a mother bear with her cubs, and it was Russia. And then they had a hunter with a spear. That was Ukraine. And behind that hunter, looking over a cliff, was America, Britain, and NATO kind of egging him on. And then the camera was on a close-up of just the bear's face and just the hunter's face, saying, this is what we're seeing, but the reality is this background. And that's absolutely not true. If they wanted to make that picture, and I'll drop a link to that picture. If they wanted to make that picture true, they should show the bear's cubs in blindfolds and being left out in the cold. And then that mother bear, which would be Putin in the Russian inner circle, like in some luxury cave, and attacking, with the cubs being left in the dark and fed disinformation. So if Russia is so right, why do they have to black out their media? Why do they have to cut off all media and make it a 15-year jail sentence to say that this is a war and talk about the truth? Incidentally, on a side tangent, I also read something that on Russian state media, one of the guests started criticizing the war in Ukraine and they had to cut him off or cut her off. I saw something about this in one of the Telegram feeds. But all these Western people who are trying to give a wide perspective or opposite point of view, that's your right. But just be factual. Come here and visit and, use a little bit of common sense. I mean, if Russia's cause is so right, why are they having to bomb civilians? I mean, they're obviously doing that because they want to get a surrender. They're not winning with tactics. They're not winning because nobody was there welcoming them. Russians thought that all the Ukrainians would welcome them and this would just be a roll through. And that didn't happen. So they started just bombing the civilians. They're angry. And so why don't these quote unquote people trying to give another perspective show that or talk about that or put that into their cartoons? If they're trying to say, oh, we're not seeing the whole picture. I'm here in Ukraine. I'm hearing stories like how Russians murdered a father and two children, and then the wife asked, please kill me. They didn't kill her. I'm hearing crazy stories. Stuff that you can't make up. So Ron Paul and all you think tank people, why don't you come out here? Why don't you come out here and then draw your cartoons and make your little YouTube reports and send out your newsletters, with a bit of perspective. This is Europe, and on Russian TV, there were already some military analysts was talking about how they could take the Baltics, from Kaliningrad and from the St. Petersburg side, so they really are crazy, and I don't know why you don't show that on your state TV, that, oh, Russia's just trying to protect itself. Who the hell wants to be living like Russia? Who the hell? Ukraine chose to go the Western way and chose to make those allies. We didn't roll in here. The Western countries didn't come in here with tanks and propaganda and bombing people. I mean, maybe the propaganda is that, hey, you work for a Western company and you get treated fairly and you earn a good salary and you can buy an apartment and you can live a normal life, versus, being afraid of secret police and people snitching on you for having your own opinions. I guess that's the propaganda that they're so afraid of. But yeah, the other one is Tucker Carlson. Always, he does make some valid points, like other countries will work around sanctions, but I can hear a bias, that he doesn't want to get America involved here, lower American standard of living. But I guarantee you, if Russia secures all those resources and has China at their back, the standard of living will be a lot worse, and we will have a big Cold War. what the U.S. has to do now is influence China that, the U.S. is a bigger trading partner with China than Russia. And the U.S. has to also start working on that. Tucker Carlson could talk about that, like how U.S. should, leverage China against Russia and maybe encourage China to go for the eastern side of Ukraine. So it's you just read a lot of shit, from these libertarians and these think tank people. I mean, I'm not a fan of CNN either. I'm a fan of like thinking and having the facts, but this is sometimes a bit too much. I mean, this is really going on here. These things that are happening and you're reading in the news, they really are happening here. I'm seeing the refugees coming. I'm hearing the stories. Lviv is like a last stop before people go to Europe. So, yeah. Anyway, you all have a nice day, and I'll post those links below. Thank you, and bye-bye.